Okay, so I'm not sure how much I want to talk about the NEAMS program specifically, because with these CINR topics, we're trying not to make these specific to programs. I will say that for the Office of Nuclear Energy, modeling and simulation is a really important area. There are modeling and simulation tools that are developed under the NEAMS program, and to a lesser degree under some of the other Office of Nuclear Energy programs. Much more in the other programs, there is use of modeling and simulation techniques and tools. There are, benchmarking activities and and testing of NEAMS and other tools. So that's there's a lot going on across the department. There are artificial intelligence, machine learning aspects and techniques that folks are using. It just runs the gamut. So this particular topic area is focused on modeling and simulation to try to differentiate it from other topics that are in this call, having to do with reactor and fuels and other technologies. I tried to make it clear that this topic area should be more about the development specifically of modeling and simulation tools, whereas use of them in some way, shape, or form for a specific technology should be in another topic area. But as long as the focus of the work that's being proposed is on development of tools in particular, then this topic area is very wide open for anything that folks might want to propose in that area. We list some topics, some typical topics and subtopics of modeling and simulation in this topic area, but it's not exclusive. So as long as it fits the criteria of being about developing new techniques, new modeling tools, or new additions to existing codes or something like that, I think it should be appropriate in this topic area. So like I said at the beginning, we try to leave this wide open. It's not specific to anything that the NEAMS program or any other DOE nuclear energy program is specifically pursuing or endorsing. It's very wide open. So I think with that, that's about all there is to say. So I'll be happy to take questions, or even Drew, if you know of some that have typically come up in the past, or maybe some you've already received, be happy to answer those as well.
Yeah, Will, I had one additional thought as you were talking, Dave, and then we'll open it up here. I think one of the important things to recognize is Dave kind of made this distinction between, the development of codes or, modeling and sim techniques versus the application of those techniques going into their respective areas. Like if it's a fuel modeling, to go to the fuels area, right? I think the thing I'd like to emphasize there is that it's more important that you submit the application, and if there's some type of hey, this is really an application, and you submit it to this mod sim area, Dave and the team here at the integration office look through those, and we'll make some suggestions of, hey, this is really an application of a code, to really, use on the reactor development side or fuel side, and it should go there. And we'll reach back out to you if we feel like, hey, it has a better opportunity to compete in a different area that's not, so that's a little bit less mod sim centric. So I just wanted to mention that. Don't stress too much about trying to get the right area. And if you do have questions beforehand, of course, reach out and we can help direct you a little bit in those spaces. Other than that, Dave,
Yeah,
the main question we get is the one you answered, which is how to kind of think about mod sim versus mod sim with everything else. So I think you answered the one that's the most common.
okay. And you just addressed the one that I've gotten the most in years past. You know, does this fit under this one or another one? And we can still address some of those questions, but in the past I've said exactly what you said. If there's a question, submit it. We'll work to address, especially in pre-application phase or something like that, if it's in the right area.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, we'll open this up for just more or less an informal question and answer session. You can raise your hand or unmute yourself and show your screen, and we can or show your video, excuse me, and we can take any questions that you have. We'll just stay on until those questions are finished off, and then let Dave go about his day. So we'll hang here for a minute, and you can either toss the questions into the chat if you don't want to ask them out loud, or raise your hand and you're welcome to take the floor.
Yep, I see there's a hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, hello. Hello, David and Andrew and everyone. So thank you for this opportunity. So I'm Jin Chindu from University of North Texas, and we're working on atomistic simulation of glass ceramic materials, interested in corrosion behaviors of these materials in terms of waste immobilization as well as the fuel. So I have a question regarding the core of this particular program. Do we need to have experimental validation as part of the proposal?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. No, you don't have to have it as part of the application. We've had a question in the past about if applications involve both, development or refinement of a tool and experimental, and experimental data generation. Should it go under this topic or should it go under another one? In the past, I've said something along the lines of what I said at the beginning. If it's much more focused on the development of a tool or modeling capability, I would put it in this area. If it's more focused on the data generation and you're using the tool to see how useful the data is or something like that, I would put it more in one of the other topic areas. But again, if it's unclear to you which one it should go in, you can definitely put it here. But there's no requirement for the experimental piece in this area.
All right. Well, that's great. Yeah, we are we're interested in this program. Yeah, indeed, we are aiming to develop a Monte Carlo simulation program to model for mesoscale modeling of the corrosion of ceramics and the glass materials and with complex structures. So there's no existing code, and in Europe, there's one code have been developing, but in the US, we do not have a existing code. And so particularly we're trying to incorporate like dynamic simulation that generate the structure with complexity of the real materials. So that's where the complexity of the code and where I'll come from. So another question is, do we have to incorporate this code with some of the existing codes within the DOE, like Idaho Labs, or this can be a standalone code and for the modeling?
Yeah, so the shorter answer is no, it doesn't have to be. I mean, again, we tried to make this pretty wide open to keep from limiting ideas. And depending on the application or, the scope that you're proposing, sometimes it doesn't even make sense to put in another code. It's something completely separate. So the shorter answer is no. As you were discussing some of that, it reminded me, and I think we got a question next along the same lines, but I lost my train of thought. There's no requirement that it be put into a DOE tool. The one thing I would say is this is not, new space. People have been doing modeling and simulation and developing tools for a long time. There's a lot of capabilities out there. You really, in an application, you need to demonstrate that you are aware of the tools that are out there that may be similar to what you're developing, so that it's very clear what the advancement that you're making is. Yeah, so that's the biggest thing I would say. If you're developing a new capability, you can take that capability and put it into another code, including one of the DOE ones, but you don't have to. And I'm going to address the rest of what I was going to say to one of the comments in the chat. Does that help?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Looks like you've seen this question in the chat. Do the tools developed and improved have to be under the current NEAMS portfolio?
Yeah, so I'll say a little bit more about that. My answer that I just gave addresses at least most of that, I think. Our tools are available if it makes sense for whatever advancement is being done to put it into one of our tools. That's definitely actually encouraged, but it's not a criteria for an application under this area. It just provides a little more direct value to the DOE program and others who are using our tools. So you can, but you don't have to. The one thing I have said in the past is, and this goes along with some of that comment I was just making, there are a lot of capabilities out there, and sometimes we receive applications to develop something new that it's pretty obvious there are multiple very capable similar capabilities that exist. And so it behooves anyone who's submitting an application to discuss the limitations in any of those existing capabilities out there, and why it's more appropriate to create something that could be seen as duplication. And sometimes there are reasons to create something new, but it would be good to address why it's better to create and somewhat duplicate rather than add to something that exists out there. So that would be the one thing I would add, more related to the tools that we're developing within the DOE program and whether to use them or not. If you're developing something that's very similar, you'll need to really explain why having another one is really important. Monte Carlo tools would be something I would think about in that regard, because there are so many out there. If you were going to develop a completely new one, that would be a really big question I would have, as opposed to, adding a new technique to an existing tool.
So, and Dave, just building off of that, maybe one of the biggest changes that we've had over the last 2 years is the review criteria, and the review process has changed pretty significantly. And this kind of falls in line with what Dave has been saying about the modeling and sim situation, but also across the entire CINR. It's the same in that we've really shifted to a full technical review, and we've removed what we would call like a programmatic style review. So it's really, is it relevant or not to the Office of Nuclear Energy mission? If it's a yes, it's going to go for full technical review. And that's really what I think Dave is getting at, is that responsibility shifts itself to all of you to really provide the justifications, rather than DOE identifying the tools or the specific NEAMS codes, for example, and saying, develop directly on these because we find these as a priority. We're really shifting that responsibility over to all of you to make a justification, whether it's an integration of a tool or a brand new tool or a brand new technique, to make the justification along with what you're actually going to do to convince that set of technical reviewers that you're truly filling a gap or truly doing something innovative, right? Rather than kind of retreading the same path as some code that's already out there. So yeah, good perspective there, Dave, and it's really closely associated with the way the review criteria is set up now in the new CINR FOA.
Sorry, yeah, I know we got another question from Dr. Wu at VCU. Is there any resource publicly available to make us aware of the latest R&D efforts under NEAMS, trying to avoid proposing overlapping if there is any? Yeah, really good question. While we try to keep websites up to date, it's difficult to keep them completely up to date with the very latest, that is being accomplished within the program, or even that's, envisioned to do in, say, the next year or two. I would point for description of what we're doing in the program, I would start at the NEAMS website, which is neams.inl.gov, and one of us can put that in the chat in a minute. That should identify, it's going to identify more of the broad efforts that we're doing on the DOE NE program, but it also identifies team members who would serve as a good point of contact to reach out to and find out the very latest. And I'd offer, myself as an additional resource, if you want to find out what is the latest activity and even, thinking or plans within a particular subtopic like thermal hydraulics or reactor physics. If you'll email me, I can put you in touch with the right technical area lead who can give you much more detail on where we are and where we're going. So I think that would be the best way to go about it.
Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in, so I'm going to hand it over to Drew for some final comments.
Yeah, really want to thank Dave for making himself available. This is an opportunity where we appreciate program managers supporting and coming out to answer some questions. From here on out, as Dave said, check out the NEAMS website. If you need more resources about what's ongoing in the DOE space, that you can find them there. Please reach out to NEUP, the NEUP Integration Office, if you have questions about the overall review process, application deadlines, or if you need to get in touch with program managers, we can help you get in touch with folks that can answer your questions. I do want to remind everyone of some quick due dates for this topic area 8. June 26th is our pre-application due date. And that is going to be a required date to submit for all of the CINR R&D areas. So keep that in mind. And I think that's all that I have. Dave, any parting thoughts before we go?
I got a request for my email. Hopefully I typed it right because I was typing quickly, but I threw it in the chat. I just want to thank folks for participating. Appreciate the questions.
Sounds good. Take care, everyone.